Good morning, everybody. Good evening, everybody. What am I thinking? I've been out of practice, guys. I don't remember how to do this. So, hi, everybody. How are you? Welcome to LessonPix Live. We hope you're having a great start of the school year, and I'm glad you can join us to welcome one of our absolute favorite guests, Dr. Karen Erickson from UNC Chapel Hill, and one of the true experts in the field of teaching kids to read when they have disabilities and challenges. If you don't know, Karen's the author of Comprehensive Literacy for All, a book that most of us have within reach, but I don't. I'm sure she does, and Beth probably does over there. It is kind of the special ed Bible for how to teach reading, and I love that we're able to include her in a friend of LessonPix. We've had a lot of interactions over the past 3 years, and I've got to say, my conversations with Karen are among the. Oh, look, we have a book. Thank you, Beth.
A well-marked up book.
A well-marked up book. So my conversations with Karen and the things that we've done together are some of the most interesting and quick and intelligent conversations that we've ever had. So, Dr. Erickson, thank you for joining us. And I have been told I'm only allowed to call you that once. So welcome. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. I'm great. And I'll just tell you that I'm working on the outline for the revision to the book. So we've learned a lot since we published that book.
Well, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're all in that situation, right? So what's the quote of you, Maya Angelou, right? When you know better, you do better. Isn't that
correct?
Right.
Correct.
So,
and you just never think you have it right. Because if you had it right, nobody would be having a hard time learning how to read and write. So we haven't figured it out yet. We got to keep going.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on in literacy world these days, right? So let's talk a little bit about what the past year or so has looked like. A couple big things have happened. I mean, for me, I had never heard of I had heard of systematic phonics instruction and Orton Gillingham and things like that. But the shift to that being so mandatory and so pervasive now is definitely significant over the past year or two, right? And then the stuff that they're doing at the University of Florida has made that really, really accessible at this point, financially accessible, right?
Yeah. I did my first presentation on the need to teach people who use augmentative and alternative communication systematic phonics instruction in the spring of 1992. And I did a presentation with someone who many of you will know named Bruce Baker. And we co-presented on why and how we needed to be teaching systematic phonics to people who used AAC. So at the Center for Literacy and Disability Studies, which is where I am at UNC, we have forever tried to get people to understand why it's really important to be teaching phonics in a very explicit and systematic way. And one of the big challenges is there are multiple ways to teach phonics and have it be explicit and sequential and systematic. And the most widely known interpretation of what that means are the approaches like you referenced, Orton Gillingham, these approaches that are called print-to-speech approaches. Those approaches have been around for quite a while, and they are often involve kids having to learn a bunch of rules and are really hard to teach when you can't hear the individual in their efforts to say the rules that they're applying. You can't hear their errors. And many of the kids that we work with, while they might use speech in context to be able to support their communication with other people, their articulation isn't clear enough for you to know if they've been accurate with a short I versus a short E or something like that. And so we've really been working hard for years to help people think about how can you be systematic and explicit in ways that don't require students to say sounds and to orally blend words.
Think about where that is positioned in your mouth.
Right? And that's been the shift that's happened more recently with UFLI, the University of Florida Literacy Initiative, being the most broadly known application of that currently. And that's this shift to speech to print, where you make assumptions about kids, which we can do for most children when they show up at school, that they have been speaking for years and that they're able to say all of the sounds that are in written English, and you get them to start paying attention to the way they're producing those sounds and teach them to map their spoken sounds onto print. And again, that's a really hard way to go for a child who doesn't have any speech.
Right.
And
How do you even play? How do you play with the
right,
sounds? How do you
exactly.
do it? Right.
Exactly. And so now we're asking them to use a system that they've never been able to use, to learn a system that's this abstract, really hard system. So really continuing to like it, UFLI is an awesome example. They have unbelievable results. They're being used so widely in general ed with a ton of success, ton of success. And we're supporting teachers when we have kids who are included in those classrooms and everybody else is learning using UFLI, and you happen to be the one child who has cerebral palsy and has an AAC device, and so trying to think through what are the logical ways to include that kid in this general education instruction that's going on. But what does it look like if you're teaching a whole group of kids who find it difficult to use speech to communicate, or you're tutoring a child one-on-one? Probably would make a choice to take a different approach that isn't fundamentally based on let's help kids pay attention to the way sounds are articulated to help them learn how to write those and read those sounds.
Right. And I think when you look, and Lori and I have been to the UFLI Foundation's training, although she's much more, she understood it a lot better than I did, all the years she had in the classroom. That is like, you're doing 30 minutes a day, and it is very much, I got a note that says, we're having trouble streaming to Facebook. Of course we are. Beth, can you check and see if it's looking okay? So if you're on Facebook and you're having trouble, go over to YouTube and you can watch us there, because it doesn't say it's a problem with the stream. It looks like it's a problem with Facebook. And this will also be recorded either way, so we'll be able to share it. So what I was going to say was the instruction that is presented in that 30 minutes is very much about the mapping, right? So the grapheme to phoneme mapping and where it is in your mouth. But there are parts of UFLI that are applicable regardless of how you're doing the presentation. The order in which you're teaching and the importance of those mappings and what order they go in is still valid, right? In many cases, it's still valid, right? It's just a matter of how are you going to teach these? Each of these steps that you're teaching, what is it going to look like?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So
and several of the steps that are in a traditional UFLI lesson are exactly the same things that we would do. Just depend less on oral practice and depend less on having kids pay attention to what their mouth is doing. And, some people are having kids pay attention to what the adult's mouth is doing to help them get it. But that's not a strategy that becomes independent, right? They can't take that with them. They always have to have the adult there showing them that they're either saying, for example, the TH or the PH, right? And so that's not going to help the kid when the adult's not there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So let's talk about how on earth we started working together on this.
Yeah.
And I'm going to move you here because they didn't come here to see me. They came here to see you. So we started working on literacy. Actually, all of us can be here for this for a second. Yeah. So all of us started working on literacy together at LessonPix about 2 years ago at a get together, the summit, whatever you want to call it, in North Carolina. And we got together and said, how can LessonPix support literacy better? And we had really good conversations that didn't lead to anything immediate, but led to a lot of later conversations about how we could do better. Honestly, we're looking at literacy instruction because it's more of a gen ed. It's on the gen ed side. We're trying to get more symbol support in the gen ed side, on the tier 1 side, and it's a very good entry point to it. So commercially, there's a good reason for us to be doing it. Also, it's kind of where we live. Like Lori's been early childhood special ed, but early childhood blended classrooms too. So she's been doing this, and it's very much part of what we want to be doing. We didn't start anything right away. You and I had a lot of conversations about AI, and we ended up.
I'm interrupting you for a minute because Lori, you left that meeting and went back and added features to lots of your storybook work that you were doing. A lot. Yeah. So there were some pieces of that resulted in some pretty quick additions and modest tweaks to all of the good work that was already being done. So there was some immediate stuff. It just wasn't the new exciting development stuff that you like, Bill.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's the part that I have to be involved in. Right. So Lori did a ton on the In a Story and things like that. And if you haven't seen the In a Story section, you should. It's amazing. We'll show a little bit of it today.
Yeah.
I am seeing that everybody on Facebook is having to move over to YouTube to see us there, which is just kind of infuriating, right? But it's okay. We'll also post the recorded version of this. The other thing that came out of this was you and I realizing that we have a lot of fun playing with this together, right? We have a lot of interesting conversations about what could be done, what might be done. And then we went to a conference in April of this year in Columbus. And it was discouraging for me. It was very much a whole language conference, and they were selling a lot of books. It definitely was someplace where creating your own materials was not something anybody was doing. There was nothing at all about special ed kids or anybody with disabilities other than dyslexia, which nothing wrong with supporting kids with dyslexia, but it's the only thing mentioned at this conference at all. And I kind of left grumped and went back to North Carolina because my plane was canceled. And I drove the next day all the way to Raleigh from Waynesville, which is like 5 hours, because I needed you to talk me off a ledge. Is that a good way of describing that conversation?
You were a little fired up after being at that conference. That would be true.
Yeah. And I remember we had a great conversation with you and your husband, and started talking about, let's talk about what we have. What do we have? What can we do? What are the tools that are out there? And I asked the question, what on earth is UFLI? Because what I was seeing at that conference was something that was really kind of awful. It was all these whole language people sticking literal number stickers on the back of books to tell you where you should use this book in your UFLI sequence and putting a UFLI aligned sign. It has nothing to do with how you're teaching at all. It was just, though most of them don't be able to read this by then. There's nothing that says that at all, right? So none of that was there. But they all had this piece of paper, which was the UFLI scope and sequence. I realized, wait a minute, I have all the tools in the Sound Finder and in the Letter Finder. We have a database that can make this really kind of amazing. What can we do? And you told me exactly what to do. And I love that about you. So Karen Erickson has a computer in her brain that runs her software and makes it behave in her brain exactly the way she wants it to work. And she can tell you what you're supposed to do to make it happen, which is awesome. Sound right?
It's a bit of an overstatement, but it's so good.
I am not the only person who says you're amazing. You know that, right? So we did. We spent the last few months coming up with our literacy toolbox. It is in addition to the other things that we've added. So I want to go through and talk about what we've added to LessonPix and what it's used for. I also want to talk a little bit about, maybe we should do this first. Do you want to talk a little bit about what we're talking about at ASHA and why we're presenting together?
Sure. And so ASHA, those of you who are speech language pathologists know that the calls for proposals for that conference are due in early April. And Bill had just started implementing some of these ideas we had about ways that we could help teachers and speech language pathologists create materials for teaching and intervention that would truly be aligned with UFLI, that would allow related service providers generally, but particularly speech language pathologists, to create intervention materials that they would use as part of their articulation therapy, their syntax therapy, their whatever areas they were working on, that they'd be able to create symbol supported materials that would align directly to what kids were learning in the classroom. And you had gotten far enough along in development that it led us to this really clear vision of ways that we could put together a proposal that would help speech language pathologists think through why it really would be beneficial to kids that while you're working on your oral language goals, you would do it in ways that would support kids' development in the written language in a way that was directly tied to what was happening in the classroom, and that you wouldn't actually have to be in the classroom to know, and teachers wouldn't have to give you lesson plans for you to know what was happening in the classroom. You just needed to know what lesson number the teacher was teaching this week. And
Right.
Bill then built this magic into LessonPix that allowed you to select the lesson number that the teacher is working on and know that the materials that you were creating were then going to be aligned with what was happening in the classroom.
Yeah, I think the key here is we're not trying to limit the words you can use. We're trying to make you aware. If you're doing final K words, use the final K words that they know how to decode, right? You're probably gonna be more effective in your speech pathology because they're also going to be able to read the words, but you're also supporting them being able to read these things. And let's just make them aware and be able to choose to use the words that are decodable at the level they're at in their instruction.
Yes.
And you said at the time, use UFLI.
Uh-huh.
You were very clear.
Right.
And probably confusing to some people.
Yeah. Because here I am saying, like, it's not my first choice for the kids who I spend the most of my time with, but it is an excellent choice as a general education solution. And people are having success adapting it in order to make it work for kids who have a range of developmental disabilities.
Yeah.
And it is currently used in literally hundreds of thousands of classrooms across the United States. And so all of those speech language pathologists who are in elementary schools across the country, who are working with kids who, young kids, K2, pre-K2, mostly right now it's K2, but UFLI hinted on their Facebook group this week that pre-K is coming. That all of those speech language pathologists in general education settings who are trying to support speech and language development for students are going to find that if they use this tool to align their intervention materials, that their kids are going to doubly benefit. Yeah.
So I'm excited that we've got this working. I suppose we should probably show it.
Yes.
If anybody does get back on and start seeing us on Facebook, let us know in the comments. We do see the comments, by the way. They're over. They'll pop up as they come in. So let me know if we're coming back on there. But if not, Beth, keep posting that they should jump over to YouTube if they can. And if you comment on YouTube or Facebook, we're seeing the comments. So I'm seeing the comments from Facebook, even though they may not see the stream. So I'm very sorry about that, Karen. That's a big bummer. But let's start showing what we're talking about. And I guess let's start maybe here. Why not? Okay. So this is LessonPix. If anybody doesn't know LessonPix, I'm not sure how you got to this stream. But this is LessonPix, and this is the new dashboard that we released yesterday, Monday? I don't know, just a few days ago. And it organizes things a little bit differently than they did a couple weeks ago. Let me get this bigger so we can see. But what we added here is really the fact that if you are a teacher, let's start with if you're a teacher who is teaching UFLI, you're a K-2 teacher, you are implementing UFLI. The very first thing that we did, and this is when Karen said he had done enough that we knew it was going to work. Let's start with that. If you go here under Sound Finder, and all of this will be live tonight at midnight. I didn't want you all playing with it while we were demoing and breaking everything. There's now a section here called Phonics Finder. It lets you choose the phonics system that you're using. UFLI Foundations is the only one live. You'll see there's a Readtopia coming soon. I did get approval to announce that tonight. So Trish from Reading Wings, your partner, Trish from Reading Wings.
Building Wings, yep.
What did I say? Reading Wings, Building Wings, Readtopia, Building Wings. Yeah. Is going to be adding their scope and sequence, or your scope and sequence here. That's I should.
And those of you who are users of Readtopia, go in Readtopia. The sequence will be the combination of learning letters plus learning words. And so that will turn into a sequence that all of the things that we're going to show you that work with UFLI now will eventually work with Readtopia's sequence.
Yeah. And this actually will be, this one page will be amazingly helpful for, I think, the Readtopia folks, because it's not about aligning. It's about teaching it. It's about using it. So let's talk about what this page does. This is this page is a very simple one. If you choose the lesson that you're on, if you're on lesson 43, you're working on the all and all endings, it will show you all the words that you can use to teach this lesson. And these aren't the ones in the UFLI list. These are the English words that follow the pattern that is specified in this rule, and only uses the lessons prior to number 43. So you're not going to find any long A's in here, and you're not going to find any R-colored vowels in here, and you're not going to find the endings like meant and things like that. It's going to show you the words that you can use to teach lesson 43. So you've got your 3 irregular words that are introduced to this number. Everything else here should be all, or ull with things that you can use before, that you've been taught before. Okay. So this is what when I showed this, it was enough to say, oh, look what else we could do. But this works great. And if you're a LessonPix user, you'd understand. You'd clear your tray. You would add some words like, oh, I don't know, we'll do doll and call and gull and roll. And you might choose other words too, because you don't want to be boring. But if you want the words they can read all of these words. You get small and troll. If you open these up, you'll get, other versions of the troll. Maybe you want this kind of troll. All of these are found by looking through our phonetic dictionary and saying, okay, what are the ones that match these particular rules? So if you hit create materials, you'll make materials like normal. You might want to make a set of bingo cards. And while I'm here, I'll show a feature that we have already announced, but I'm going to show it again. Here's our words. I could sort them or do whatever else I wanted. Translating them will be completely pointless. I'll make 3x3 bingo cards for 10 kids. But one of the options we just added because of Karen and because of what she's told us is you can now say, just use the text. Don't even use the picture. Put the word in the bingo card. Hit the finish. It'll generate the bingo game that has the word in the center. Download your PDF and you're going to be good. It'll look like.
And then you can take the same activity and you can print it with just the pictures.
Right.
And while the kids are playing bingo, they've got the picture cards in front of them and the teacher calls the word and the kid needs to match the picture to the word as they're filling up. So instead of just a stamper that they're stamping on top of something that really is just a direct match to what the teacher says, instead, now the kid is actually having to read because the adult's just saying the word. Right. Or the adult could show just the picture. Right. And then the child would have to think the word and find the text.
Right. I think there's something there to talk about, if you don't mind derailing the demo for just a second.
Yeah. Of course, I don't mind derailing the demo.
So one of the things that I took away from we had a chat at CEC in Baltimore on the rooftop lounge. It was great. Like we spent an hour and it's like these little things come out of it. You said something repeatedly, and it came out of my question was, I know you hate symbolated text. And you do. And Beth does too. And I know that there are wrong ways to use symbols that inhibit literacy instruction.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, well, but I know you like lesson picks and symbols. What's the trick? What's the common thing? And the thing you said was you need to separate the picture from the word.
Yeah.
You need to have the picture on this material, the word on that material, and it gives you all these options for helping with instructions when somebody can't speak. You can do choice of a field of 5, or you can do all of these other things, but keep the words and the pictures separate so you can do both.
Mm-hmm.
Did I miss? Am I overplaying
No.
that, or is it that important?
No, I think that it's really important. And I think that in general, special educators in particular, I am one, we look at pictures and they feel so supportive, right? They have these visual representations, have a really important role. But when our literacy instruction pairs pictures with words, we make it harder for kids to learn to read the words. Their eyeballs are not on the text, their eyeballs are on the picture. At the same time, particularly when we're talking about kids who might have a difficult time saying the words that they're reading out loud, one of the benefits of having all of these visual supports is that we have ways of knowing that they're reading it that require them to look at the picture and think, what is that word? And then look at the print and think, which one does it go with? And
Right.
part of this is related to some research that Annika Dahlgren-Solberg in Sweden and Martine Smith in the UK, they did a series of studies that shows that kids who can't rely on speech to be heard and understood, that when an adult says the word for them, they can read and spell the word like their same age peers. But when an adult shows them a picture, so the specific study that I remember is Annika did a study, one of her first studies, with kids who use AAC. And she asked the kids with and without complex communication needs to spell the word cat. And these 7-year-olds with and without disability spelled the word in all of the same right and wrong ways. They made the same kind of errors. Then she showed them a picture of a cat and didn't say it and asked them to try to spell it. And at 7 years old, the kids who used AAC couldn't do it. So she was a great researcher, and she still is a great researcher. She asked the kids, well, do you know what this word is? And they could say cat using their AAC device, but they couldn't look at the picture of cat and think cat. Now, what we have learned subsequently is that it's partly developmental. It's partly a lack of experience. Nobody is providing them with opportunities because there are always adults around saying the words for them. And so they can hear it and map the sounds. And we need to find as many ways as we can to get them to think it in order to map those sounds. And so this pairing pictures and words is a really important thing to be doing for kids who can't rely on speech to be heard and understood. But it also is really helpful and engaging and keeps things interesting.
Right.
And like you just showed that, the all of the options for troll,
Right.
right?
Right.
I know a whole group of kids who I could have spent an hour working on troll because of the cool different pictures that you have of troll,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
those 6 alternatives for troll are so interesting, engaging
bunch
that
of skulls too, right?
exactly. Exactly.
And and one of the things I was going to say too is like where I find the pictures really, really helpful to be able to toggle back and forth and have things with pictures without is also because sometimes I need to teach this as vocabulary. My kids that I work with don't necessarily know what a gull is or what a troll is or what a scroll is. And so I can use the pictures and the words together to teach the vocabulary. I can separate out the pictures and the words to then apply the literacy work with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things that you said, yes, I got you. One of the things you said, Karen, is that you said pairing them is important. Combining them is wrong.
Right. Pairing them, like literally the kid does the pairing.
Right.
Right.
Right. Exactly right.
Not us providing them with materials where the picture and the word are together. Right. If our goal is literacy, we're sabotaging our efforts.
Right. The light didn't go on until you said that at the CEC, and I'm like, oh, I need to make it text only work. I need to make this work because I get it. I don't think it was clear. I knew it was bad to do the simulated text, and I got it, and we stopped doing it. But I never understood as clearly as that conversation. I'm really glad you repeated it again. I'm sorry if I put you on the spot, because we never plan out these things.
Yeah. It's okay. I was just going to add that those of you who are in states right now where you have reading laws, which is about more than 25 of the states at this point, one of the things to really be thoughtful about is that most of those state reading laws come down really hard on 3 cueing systems, on having kids learn to pay attention to pictures in books instead of learning how to read the word.
Right.
And those laws are pointing to a bunch of research that's been done where it's literally helping kids who are reading most of the words figure out 1 or 2 words using the illustration to support them. And the research says we're not helping kids at all if we do that. Imagine how people's minds would be blown if they knew how many kids with intellectual disability across our country, every day their reading instruction is literally teaching them to pay attention to a picture for every word that's in the text, right? The state law says you can't even teach kids to use the illustration to learn how to read
the one picture on the page,
right? And so I think we just have to be really thoughtful about the way that we're using them, and that we're using them to be able to check in about what kids know, as opposed to using them as a replacement for reading the word.
Yeah. So cool. So I'm so glad we've been playing with this, by the way. I know I geek out on this a little bit, but let's show.
Go back to your demo.
Let's go back to my demo. So this thing works great. And the other important thing that's on this page is this little section up here. And we'll see this several times, but so just to be clear, there is no AI here. There's no thing that learned how to talk or anything like that. This is absolutely systematic, procedural, logical, old school programming. We went through every English word and we sorted it into where you'd introduce it in UFLI by following all the patterns in the phonetic dictionary, and we just mapped them all out. What that means is we can go through and we can type in any English word, and like you type in I don't know, cute, and you look up the word, it'll tell you. It'll be introduced at lesson 58. UE spells long U or U. Here are the other lessons that are needed. You have to teach T says T, C says K, and U blank E spells long U. And it also tells you what the phonetic spelling is in our dictionary. That's mainly for us so that we can debug when it's in the wrong place. It probably means we've got the phonetic spelling wrong in the database. But this was a piece of debugging that when I showed it to Karen and Lori and Beth, all of them said, "You're going to leave that in, right? You're going to leave that in." And I'm like, yeah, sure. Because I mean, you type in something like I did chandelier. You type in chandelier and say, where are we going to introduce chandelier? Well, we're going to introduce chandelier at lesson 118. And here's all the stuff you need to learn before you can learn chandelier. And it's kind of great to be able to see the fact that it really is that systematic. You're going to follow this thing, and when you get to 118, you'll know how to read this, right? So that is how we do this. It's what we needed to do in order to make it work. And so this is the first of several things we're going to show that.
I want to add something to clarify a little bit that I think is important for people who are looking to UFLI. So UFLI doesn't make any claims that kids would be able to read chandelier in that lesson when it's introduced, because they do this interleavening. And so those of you who have read our Comprehensive Literacy for All book, we call it repetition with variety. They call it interleavening. It's the same science of learning concept where you don't teach things to mastery, you introduce them, and mastery develops over time because you're circling back through and through. Right. So
it doesn't mean you should expect it then. It's when you start introducing
you start introducing it.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
And when you look at chandelier and you see that the CH was introduced at lesson 70, whatever, you should find that by the time kids are getting, okay, it's the alternate CH here. But so you should find that by this time, kids are doing really great with the nasolated A and the D and the L,
Right.
because those were introduced many lessons ago.
And have
Which
been
means
repeated in all the
and
words since then.
repeated over
Right.
and over. Exactly.
Exactly.
Exactly. So
And isn't it
just to be clear.
Isn't it also just about the fact that you've taught the patterns and the rules that the kids can then apply to a word that perhaps they haven't necessarily?
It's 100% what all of this is about, is that it's not about learning to read the words that are in the lesson. It's learning the skills that are taught so you can read any word. But they wouldn't expect you to read
chandelier
any
is not listed anywhere
Yeah.
in the UFLI manual. There's zero chance of that, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing of note is not every word is taught in UFLI, right? I mean, even small words. If I do the word lynx, Lynx, like that pattern is not taught in UFLI. We'll say so. UFLI does not introduce the word lynx. And it even tells you why. I probably shouldn't show these numbers. This is more for debugging. But basically, it's telling us we don't have a mapping for I and we don't have a mapping for ng, because there is no mapping for those two things that map to this word. So there are words that legitimately won't be taught in UFLI. There's ones that won't be taught in Readtopia's scope and sequence as well, right, Karen?
There'll be many more, because our scope and sequence doesn't extend anywhere near as high as UFLI does at the end of second grade.
Excellent. I mean, great.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to. It's
Thanks
not the
for
goal.
The clarity.
Yeah, it's all good. So let's talk about some other things before we run out of time. There's lots of other stuff to show here. Probably the first thing that's interesting is that we started browsing and looking in our clip art library and saying, well, what if you were just working on here? I'll go turn this off for a second so you can see what it looks like without this. And Lori wants me to add a button that hides this, so she's probably she usually is. So when you go to a category in LessonPix, it would look something like this. I'll zoom back out for a second. So I'm looking at bugs, or I'm looking at birds, or I'm looking at whatever it is. It shows you all of the pictures that go with this concept, right? And these have been sorted into birds and bugs and things like that. But you're not going to be able to read the word albatross. It's a 3-syllable word. There's all kinds of things you don't know how to know if you're at lesson 47, right, or 52. You might not even be able to do bird because of the R-colored vowel, right? So if you're in here and you know what lesson you're at, like I'm only on lesson 31, this will go through the same set here. And it will show you the words that your kids know how to decode that have to do with these pictures and are readable at lesson 31. Okay. And it is important that everybody understands how this one works, because once you understand this one, everything else in the LessonPix Literacy Toolbox makes sense. So if I want to work on on birds, they can say eggs. So I'll clear my tray over here, and rather than say albatross or eagle, which has a long E, or African jacana, right? I'll choose eggs. I'll choose chicks. I'll throw them over here in the tray. I'll use hen instead of chicken because they don't know 2-syllable words yet, right? And when you drag this picture over, it will use the word that they know how to decode. It won't use the other words. Like if you look big, right? It's a big chicken. A big hen, a big fat hen. I don't know what it is. This one's sitting on her eggs. You have other things that you can talk about that are words that they do care about, like, or that they do know how to read, like nests. Here's a nest you can talk about. The kids know how to decode these words. You're also going to use other pictures. You're not limited to these, right? You're going to want birds because you're talking about birds, right? But you want to make sure you include the words that they know how to decode. Okay. So before I move on, I'm going to ask anybody on Facebook or YouTube, if you have any questions about this, stop us if you lost us here. But Karen, this was one of the first interesting things that we did. And it's kind of cool, right?
Yeah. And you can think about in classrooms where teachers are trying to think about creating stations or homework or independent work, this is a way to be able to do that that's related to whatever your theme is,
Right.
and that is aligned with the particular lesson that's being taught.
Right.
And so you increase the likelihood that students will be able to do some of the homework or the center work or their independent work independently, because you're giving them materials that are using words that they are going more likely to be successful navigating.
Right. Right.
The other thing I want to point out that might not be obvious to people who are looking on a small screen is the circles that are next to every word. Those circles have a number in them, and that tells you what lesson is aligned with that word. So a lower number increases the likelihood that the kid's going to be super successful with that word. A number that's super close to the lesson that you're working on right now might be more challenging because the kid hasn't had as much practice with the particular skill.
Yeah. And you can change how this is sorted.
Uh-huh.
So if you want to work on the things they just learned, sorted by the latest, it'll show the things closest to where they are in the sequence. And it's color coded red to green. So the red ones are going to be harder to decode. And in theory, the green ones they've had more practice with, even if whether they're successful or not. The earliest ones will be the ones that are that were taught first. And A to Z just alphabetizes them so you can find things. The last one is relevance, and that's going to be more important. It is that how many pictures we have. In categories, it's less important, but you'll see why it's really important in articles and thematic units in a minute. Okay, but that's how this works. I'll zoom back out here. Thank you for calling that out, Karen. But this is key. So if you understand how this works, you're going to understand how our tools work really well. Okay. Beth, Lori, if I missed anything, do I need to stop and explain it? Oh, one thing I didn't show is that once you open one of these, like drop, all the different drops that are in this category are in here, and this explain is here, and that will pop up the same explanation box that we saw before that explains where that word is introduced in UFLI.
I was just going to make one.
Go ahead.
Comment. So when you show, this is a perfect one, like you showed the word drop. That's all the ones that are in this.
In
category.
So if that word drop is the way that drop is in there is not as relevant for your learners, or like the word big, like it's a big hen, but maybe that's not the way it helped me. I was like, oh, I'm just going to go search in the library for the word.
For the word. Right. If you want all the words that are drop, like drop might show somebody dropping a basket, but this is food coloring because it's in the cooking category, right?
Yeah.
And so a drop of food coloring is here. The drop of book isn't relevant to the cooking category. So we try really hard to show the ones that are relevant to the category you're working on. That's right. And so I'm glad you noticed. I remember you asked me that question and it wasn't immediately clear. I think you'd see it over time. I think you'd understand how that worked over time.
I think you do when you notice it. And for me, it was really helpful when I was creating resources that I knew if I really wanted to picture a big,
right,
that represented, for whatever reason, if I wanted the image to represent something that they were going to make an association with, whether it's for that matching or whether it's because I'm teaching a vocabulary word or something like that.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about the other places we can do this. So this is browsing the clip art library and being able to do that. The other place that we do this, and this is really what Karen and I are talking about at ASHA, is everything in the Sound Finder now will add decodable words. So if you're doing final K words and you do, I don't know, chalk, a word that is not decodable at all, but I want the k sound at the end of the word and I don't want any blends, it'll find all the words that have a final K sound without any blends, right? And it will highlight the ones that they know how to read or know how to decode, in theory, at lesson 31. They've been taught to decode by lesson 31. Is that a better way to say that, Karen?
Yeah.
Okay. And so, again, you can go in here and you can change what lesson you're on. Like, okay, now we're at lesson, 42. You'll see that it's going to have more words. And they're still indexed by whatever you sort here. So they'll say most recent ones, you just taught them yak at lesson 30, which is probably the Y one, right? So if you go further up, you can say things like, at 67 or 8, I think you've got all the syllables, multi-syllabic words. You get a lot more words that are final K, isolated, still following the same pattern that the Sound Finder does, but highlighting the ones that they know in theory how to read at this point. Okay? So it should be easy if you're making articulation cards to focus on the ones they know how to read, right? You can still do syllable sorting. You can still do pattern filtering. It all applies to both of these, and it works. This works on all of them. I won't go through everything, but real quickly, if you do, I don't know, TR at the beginning of the word, it'll find all the TR words, and then it'll filter the ones that they know how to read by lesson 68. Okay, so that they have been taught how to read. How to decode, that they've been taught how to decode by lesson 68. Is that the right way to say that?
Yes, it's
okay,
perfect.
I'll convert that.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what this does. It's all the way down. Pattern finder rhyming with, if you want things that rhyme with, I don't know, cat, whatever. It will go through, it'll find all the basic rhymes just like it always did. It will also then show you the ones that they can decode. Okay.
So
they've
Lori,
learned. Go ahead.
Lori,
Go ahead.
Lori in the chat has a really good question when you.
Okay. As the individual increase their literacy skills, would this idea of separating words from pictures carry over to their AAC devices?
So the big thing with AAC is that it's we have plenty of evidence that kids will learn to read the words that are paired with the pictures over time. And so it's just not a very efficient way. And once kids are using those symbols, I'm not going to take them away, but I am, from the day we're starting to teach literacy, those kids need to have access to a keyboard on their AAC device. And we're teaching them to decode or to encode, to spell the words that they're learning how to read in our instruction.
Right.
Because it's not that I want them to use spelling to communicate the words that they already know how to communicate using their symbol-based system. It's that I want them to be able to use spelling to communicate all of the things they want to say that's not in their symbol-based system.
Exactly.
And so what we know about motor memory and visual memory and the visual supportiveness and distinction. Let's see, pictures are visually more distinct from one another than graphic symbols in an AAC system, are visually more distinct from one another than our printed words. And so in terms of getting to known items more quickly, I'm not going to get rid of the pictures. I certainly have worked with a couple of teenagers who insisted that we get rid of the pictures at one point, and that's a different issue. Right. But the real big thing, Lori, is to be making sure that while you're teaching your decoding, you're teaching encoding, because every AAC user must learn how to spell if they're ever going to say whatever they want, whenever they want, to whomever they want.
Yeah. Yeah. She goes on about the motor plan as well here. And I think that's true. When you remove the symbols, you didn't change their position on the device, did you?
Yeah. No.
Right. No. You can be in all kinds of trouble right there.
Yeah.
All right. So let's finish this tour here. So there are two other important places here. Karen always loved this one. This is like, I think, your favorite demo. Like if I search for, I don't know, boats, it'll do a keyword search for boats, and then it'll find all the words that they can read. And if you're only at 50, you can't say boat. You don't know how to say boat, or you haven't been taught to read boat yet, but you can do tug and ships and black and cross and all these things that are related to boats, but are decodable at this point. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's built in here to our keyword search as well. We are not doing it on the minimal pairs tool. We're just not going to do it.
It wouldn't make sense, Bill. I mean, it wouldn't make sense to do it because there's so few.
There is more to come. Karen and I are doing more fun stuff that has to do with Levenstein distances and minimal pairs and edit distances of the words and word chains and things like that. There may be something related to minimal pairs, but what we have right now for speech paths This minimal pairs tool, there is no way to turn this tool to also have filtering. It's just going to be a train wreck and it's going to explode, and I'm not going to do it. Mm-hmm. So I tried for 2 days, and I decided my head hurt too badly, and we're not going to do that right now. So the other places we've added this, and you'll notice that this is just embedded everywhere in LessonPix, right? So you'll see this little icon, this little toolbox. It's everywhere. If you're in the sharing center and you go look at a material and, it's yummy and yucky, right? The words they can read at 50 are going to be called out. And these are the symbols in there that have words and keywords that they can read, that they've been taught to read at lesson 50. They've been taught to decode. Sorry, Karen. So this is here under materials. And then the last place we've added it, and there's this almost works at this point. It kind of works great, and then it's missing a step. We also added it to all of the articles, including all of the INA stories. And this is what Karen really wants. And she's going to be very excited because she hasn't seen it yet, I don't think. Maybe an hour or two ago. But if you go to anything that Lori's worked on in a story, and those of you who don't know about in a story, this is a key thing I should just bring up. If you've never been there before, when you're logged into your account, go up here to where it says in a story, and Lori has gone through and done all the books that you already use, whether it's early childhood or middle school. There's all different levels now, and she has made all of the material, a ton of materials for each of them. So if you're doing Duck for Turkey Day, right? Lori has made, and ignore this thing to the right for a section, but she's made the vocabulary cards, comprehension questions, writing pages, things about traditions and art and social skills, Thanksgiving activities. If you do I Love You, Blue Kangaroo, same thing. She has gone through and made all these materials that you'll use while you're using this book to teach. So they're already there. This has already been part of this. It is part of our literacy initiative. And it probably does deserve a little toolbox on it, Lori, somewhere. Mm-hmm. But what we've also added is the fact that we now have all of the words that go with this story over here on the right, mapped out to where you are in your phonics instruction. And this really is where that relevant is much more important. So if you sort by relevance, these are the words that love is one of the most common words in here and all these materials that she's made. And these are the symbols that she used for it. Hug and croc and dogs. Kangaroo is not going to be there at lesson 62. It won't be there until lesson 100. But these are now in here as well. The reason I said there's one step missing, there's no tray on this page, and we need a way to display the tray when you actually want to do something with these words on the right. But that will be there before we make an official launch on this in the near future. But the way that this works is it goes through all the materials that are in here, and it looks at all the symbols that she chose, looks at all of their keywords, and it finds all the words in all of those keywords, in all of those pictures, in all of those materials, and it sorts them out by UFLI number or by sequence and puts them here at the top. So when you're making things to support a story that you already know about, and yes, I agree, Nielsen, that in the story is amazing. It doesn't just look amazing. It is amazing. It's an enormous amount of work, and this integrates with it very well. So that's the tour. I guess a couple things. Lori, did I miss anything?
Oh, I don't know. I think you got them all. There was a lot.
I worked my way through them. I didn't script it. I probably should have. There are times when I really should script things more.
I do love that the In a Story has these now, because we read for so many reasons. We read for enjoyment. We read for vocabulary or background knowledge. Like we read a lot of books in the classroom. And if I could have the decodable words that align with the content of a story, it's
right.
Like another way to engage. And I love the fact that in my workstations, one workstation might focus on just the vocabulary, but another one can align with both the content and the skills that the students have in decoding. So I think this is truly magical, and I can't wait to make more materials that, you know, line up with different lessons within the UFLI and hopefully soon with the Readtopia versions as well.
Yeah, I mean, you've done a ton of the Inna stories for the Readtopia books, right? And I think that's a constant. You'll always be adding Readtopia books as they come out as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wanted to add that one of the things that I think is really critical about the Inna story and all of the work that you've done there is that so many people are turning to UFLI as their reading program, and all they're doing is teaching the phonics part of it. But if you are teaching beginners to read and write, you have to spend equal time focused on all of the comprehension and providing them with opportunities to practice reading so they can build their fluency. And most of us are thinking about kids with a range of disabilities. That means they need more practice, but they don't need more repetition. They need more repetition with variety.
Right.
And you have so many activities that you've already created that support that. And then having this toolbox there allows teachers and therapists and others to be able to really create pretty quickly aligned additional opportunities to learn and practice. And I can see other teachers in a school or related service providers, you know, OTs can now be creating materials for their kids that are aligned with what's happening during their, you know, in the classroom, instead of working on straight lines and curved lines in handwriting practice. They could be doing things that are aligned more directly with what's happening in the class.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that it will be interesting a year from now to see like what happens with this one. Mm-hmm. Right. I'm very excited about this one. I think this is an addition that is it may be too niche. It may be hard to get the point across. Right. Mm-hmm. So I'm so excited we're going to talk at ASHA, because I think that is the one place where they listen to you there. Definitely listen to you there. I just get to stand next to you and work the demo. It's great. But I think that it will be very interesting to see what the next 6 months brings on that. Because you're right, it is something that you can't expect an OT to understand the scope and sequence of UFLI and why the order is what it is and where they are and whether or not they've learned the R sounds or whether or not they've learned the long A yet, and you can't expect it. And computers are good at stuff we're bad at. Computers are really good at following a bunch of rules and sorting words into buckets, mm-hmm. and then applying buckets when you want them to.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm very excited. So we got a few questions I want to get up here. Karen,
I want to acknowledge Alice. Alice, it's so nice to see your name. I haven't seen you in so long. It's lovely to see old friends showing up. And I just want to say, I really think, depending on the motor skills of your adult AAC user, I really encourage you to be looking at all of the different activity types and to be thinking about if the learner has somebody who could be working with them through UFLI, that would be amazing. But if not, you could use some of the UFLI placement tools. All of this is open source. And you could figure out what level that adult is at now and be able to create materials that would let him practice spelling the words that now he can read. And you'd be able to crank a ton of different materials that I can imagine somebody who's motivated to engage in some independent practice would be really successful with.
Very cool. And Alice says that you know him. So I don't know if that tips you off for anybody.
Wow.
I do see some folks, some friends of ours in here as well. I saw Tina Moreno was in here. Says it's pretty magical. I've got there's a second thing from Alice about that we already kind of
was related. Yeah.
So we've got Karen Janowski, our friend from Massachusetts. It's Massachusetts. Did you sleep while you're creating this for us, Bill? It's a very funny question. Laura, you want to take that one?
No. Actually, this has been developed for a while, for several months, but
it's been bursty.
crunch time here. Bill needs his Panic Monster to come out.
If you've never watched the Panic Monster video, you will understand me a lot better if you watch the Panic Monster video. Yeah.
So the beginning of the school year set Bill into motion, and no, neither he nor I have slept very much in the past 2 weeks.
We had 3 releases of different things. We had accessibility, we had the self-service PO process, and we had the New Year lesson picks, and then we had literacy, all within 3 weeks.
And I can interject here to announce that we did get our CAS certifications.
That's right. That's right. So we are both accessibility baseline certified and UDL certified by CAST.
Yep.
So, and that was a ton of work for a variety of reasons. We pushed that earlier, and it was a ton of work.
We also had a lot of security things going on, just making sure, keeping up with the latest security so we're not hacked.
Yeah,
and then
that was last year's mess. So
new your lesson picks came out just yesterday, I believe.
Monday, right? Monday.
Yeah, today's Tuesday.
Oh shit, today's
Tuesday. It's that sleep thing we talked.
I haven't slept yet, so you know. Michelle,
but that has a link on there that goes to an article about literacy, and it walks through those steps. And eventually we'll have this come up with a video that really walks through the power.
Yeah, we will do a fast version to walk through everything we just showed on a nice clean video before Monday. And I think in reality, we will turn this on probably tonight, but we won't do an official like announcement with videos and stuff until Monday. Does that sound right, Lori?
Yeah. Sounds right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Michelle Craig says, that's incredible. I don't know where to begin. I'm loving the possibilities. I agree. Our favorite Northern OT, Alyssa might be around, so got to be careful. But one of our favorite OTs, Judy Schoonover, is excited. Jessica Smith, advocate and wonderful person we work with on AT Makers. Is there a way to search through books on In a Story? Well, if you search for, let me show you, Jessica. If you search articles, it will search In a Story as well. So if you did Black Beauty, it will show you here. These are all the articles, but that will include the In a Story articles. Also, if you just go to In a Story, they're down here on the left if you want to browse them. Let's see what else we got here. More lesson picks, love. And yes, I agree with that. I think that's one of our big pros. And I think it is. I think UFLI is really good, but they have a really special mission, and it is to bring systematic phonics instructions to the masses in a way that is predictable and that they have done research and know that it works. And so all of the things that are outside of that box, I think they're good with people using other tools for. We've talked to Dr. Holly Hill and
you were right the first time.
What's that?
You were right the first time.
Yeah, we used to live on Holly Hill. That was our street. So.
Yeah. So we've worked with them on this, and they're aware of this anyways, and they're good with it. I think that it is interesting that the amount of variety may increase dramatically as you move further and further from the mainstream gen ed instruction. You need this more, right? Yes, Beth.
Carrie Bargloff, a little further up, had a question. When can we expect this for Retopia? I'm assuming she means the Retopia phonics instruction.
Yeah,
I think
so. We expect it later this fall, right?
Yes. So I was given direct instruction by the powers that be that I am allowed to say it's going to happen. It's going to happen this fall, and I'm not allowed to put deadlines on it. As far as I'm concerned,
Karen Erickson is the holdup on this, just to let you know.
So let's talk about that.
Because we have a scope and sequence. Like, we know exactly what the scope and sequence is on the Retopia phonics side. But the scope and sequence is not the same as the lesson by lesson introduction that's needed. So I need to do that translation for Bill then to make the parallel. Right. So anyway.
It also means that the materials that they provide has to be more explicit about lesson numbers and being clear where you are in it, right? And that's just until that, there's no point in releasing this until that's also aligned with it, because there's no way to use it if you don't have like lesson numbers to go for them. Right. So,
Right.
yeah. So,
and in Readtopia, as we built out that phonics scope and sequence, you can imagine, given that the target audience is kids with more significant disability, that we intentionally, our scope and sequence is slower. UFLI introduces a new concept every lesson, right? And in ours, a concept gets introduced, and then we have a few lessons where we're just practicing that and the ones that have been introduced previously. And then maybe after 3 or 4 lessons, another new concept
and the pacing is going to be different for every classroom.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a great answer. As far as LessonPix is concerned, Karen will do her work. We will do our work, and then the actual printed materials will be done. So we will not
want to be really clear that building wings, this is their stuff.
Yes.
But I am that holdup in that connection of making that translation. So I just wanted to make sure that people weren't building
hammering
wings.
Trish too much.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly right.
Got those, and those of you who are Readtopia users, you hope you noticed this spring that the new learning word sequence came out. And it is very, the scope and sequence has always been there, but now it's forward facing to make it clear to people that it is very systematically introducing the phonemes and graphemes, just not requiring kids to ever have to say any of those things.
There you go. So I have a follow-up question that's appropriate. If you're teaching phonics to non-speaking students, you ask them to use their inner voice instead of the choral response in UFLI.
Yeah. So I would think about trying to come up with lots of ways for our kids to get to practice. If they're K1, 2, if they were typically developing, they're like kids without disabilities don't have good control over their inner voice until the average age of 7. And so when you walk into a first grade classroom during silent reading time, it's not silent because kids without disabilities struggle to really have control over that inner voice when they're 5 and 6 years old. So we want to encourage kids to always be using, I love the term, your thinking voice, right? That like in your head. And so I want to encourage kids to be using that, but I also want to be finding other ways. So I might do some things like use LessonPix to create some activities that would allow kids to get that same practice where they might do some quick matching a picture with the word, or identifying a picture that has the sound, depending on which one of the fluency practice tasks you're doing. But not only having kids using their inner voice while everybody else is saying it, to give them some other ways to be more active in doing more encoding than would be typical in the UFLI lesson. And then LessonPix gives you a way to create some alternative options for kids during those oral response steps of UFLI.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Let's see. This is so helpful. I'm glad you like it. Kudos to LessonPix, so accessible for the practicing clinicians. Chris Bouguet. Hey, Chris, how are you? I'm glad you like it. And Heather Regan's busting at the seams to bring this back to my teachers and students. Well, got to wait until at least tomorrow. Ideally, give us the weekend to fix any bugs. Announce it to them on Monday. Gail, you too. I'm glad you're going to be excited. All right. If we're not using UFLI, would you recommend accessing the open source materials and trying to utilize them, or trying to apply this to our district's gen ed or SPED curriculums?
I think the answer is go back and make sure that in your gen ed and special education classrooms, there is high quality, systematic phonics instruction going on. That is where everybody can tell you, here's the skills that are taught, here's the order that they're taught in. And if that does not exist, or the approach that is in place doesn't seem to be resulting in kids who can read and spell words, then UFLI is an excellent thing for you to be looking at.
Yeah, I think it might be worth. Some people may not understand. So Catherine mentions the open source materials. It might be worth telling a little bit, very briefly, about those. So UFLI, the book that Beth will hold up again. Thank you. She's so handy. That book is $80 or something like that, $78, something like that. The teacher buys it once and can use it as many times as you want. And it has a cost associated with production. It is the one thing that UFLI charges. They don't charge per child. They don't charge per classroom. That is the only thing. Everything else that they provide, the videos, the PowerPoint presentations, all the other stuff is open source. And the real reason for that is the way they were funded. And it's an interesting story. Those of you who are fiction readers, like fun fiction readers, read James Patterson books. James Patterson provided a grant and offered it, I think, to any Florida university, but you have to come up on it, to write this, to create a systematic phonics instruction that would be available for free, or as for free as possible. And that's how UFLI got funded, right? This is very much, if James Patterson hadn't done that, this probably wouldn't have happened. There are other people who have money and might have made it happen, but he did. So, we should all like James Patterson a little bit more now. I know Lori's read his books. I know my daughter Allie has read his children's books, actually, or young adult books.
Yeah. So, Bill, I also think it's super important for people to hear really clearly. It is only a phonics program.
Right.
And so you must have the rest of your comprehensive literacy instruction to surround it. It also is a phonics program that is based squarely in a view of phonics instruction that starts with the assumption that kids bring speech with them to the classroom.
Right.
So if I'm trying to support a kid who's fully included in a general ed setting where UFLI is in place, I'm going to do everything I can to make the accommodations in order to allow them to be successful with what's happening in the classroom. But if I'm making a decision about a program for a child or a group of children who cannot rely on speech to be heard or understood, I am unlikely to go to UFLI as my first choice. Also, if I'm working with classrooms that are special ed classrooms for kids who have more intellectual disability or kids with multiple disability, you really have to have integrated curriculum. You have to help them work on conceptual understandings and build language, and you oftentimes have to be able to differentiate your instruction from the earliest levels of emergent literacy up through conventional literacy. And so for those classrooms, UFLI is not going to do it. It is kindergarten to second grade general education phonics instruction.
Right.
And so anything outside of that, we can be teaching kids who need those skills in different ways, right? But that's where then Readtopia and the work that you're going to be doing with Readtopia comes in. It has its own phonics scope and sequence and instruction, but it is part of comprehensive instruction that really systematically builds background knowledge, supports written language understanding, builds communication. LessonPix has beautiful communication supports for kids who can't use speech to be heard and understood that are supportive of Readtopia. So the question of, should I go and get UFLI for all of my special ed classrooms? Probably not. You probably need something different for many of those classrooms. But in your gen ed classrooms or your classrooms for kids with more high incidence disabilities, if there isn't a phonics program in place, that is a very reasonable place for you to be looking.
Yeah. I think it's also worth.
I want to add on to that as well from the training. When I went to the UFLI training, they walked through the research. And the first thing they said is that it is systematic and it is 20 minutes a day. So of your 2 hours of literacy, you use a stopwatch and it is 20 minutes, no more. They had significant research. I mean, I was shocked at how proven this was, but it's only 2 years old. But the research they had was astounding on how successful it was for general ed, K-2 in the classroom. They had 0 for special ed. And now they're doing research to use UFLI for intervention for kids that are older. but there's still not that I know of any research that talks about working with students with disabilities. The only thing they said about that, the only way they addressed it was repetition, providing those centers and workstations to do it again and again. But they were very clear that this was not meant to be, they don't have any research to show it to be used in a special education setting.
One of the things that is really cool as I've gotten to know that team, that's the UFLI team, and those of you who are familiar with comprehensive literacy for all, we talk about our conditions of learning, and we've always referred to them as conditions of learning and have our own language that we use, but those are all extracted from the science of learning. And Holly Lane and her team at the University of Florida are really clear in talking about that. Part of what makes UFLI really successful are the ways that it reflects these core principles of the science of learning. And that is one of those places about why, when I look at it, it really speaks to me, is that it reflects some of these same core principles of learning that we know are really important, regardless of the learner's profile.
Cool. So I know another question that's going to come up, and thanks for the clarification. District would fill 2 years using DLM and diving into all these programs. Excellent. Okay, so there's going to be a question of, are you going to add any more curriculums? Well, the system was designed from the beginning to have multiple curriculums in it, and there's no limit to the number of scopes and sequences that we can put in there. I can give some guidelines. The scopes and sequences have to be based on mapping graphemes to morphemes to phonemes. It can't be language based or some other method. But if it's mapped that way, we can add any of them. I have this friend who's really a literacy expert, and I would probably ask her if the curriculum was any good before I added it. Not that any of you have heard of her, but she's in North Carolina. She's really smart. So, but all right. Let's see. Let me get here. Let's see. I'll put it up here. Hi, Karen. How are you? Let me use it for those not as confident in literacy. I share a literacy. Jessica's been taking this songwriting 6 times song. Had the word say.
See.
I think she meant see, like go to see.
Oh,
C, S-E-A, C.
Yeah.
Spell and read C and C. She's so frustrated. Well, homonyms and homographs and homophones are nightmares for those of us in the development world as well. I agree with her, and it's a mess. We've just chosen the most popular version of each of the sound words and gone with it. I need a trick. I need a trick to get my district to spend the funding for Utopia. Any suggestions? I don't know. You could ask Trish for some suggestions. Any Karen?
My big thing is I always ask the person who has the purse strings for buying curriculum, would they please allocate 1% of that funding to support curriculum for the students who participate in the 1% assessment, in the alternate assessment in your state. They acknowledge that 1% of their students need something different than the gen ed. That's why they take the alternate assessment. And so if you're in a separate classroom, that seems like one way.
That's a good pitch. There you go. Another one here. What are your recommendations for students? I put this up because I know you and alternative pencils are a fan. Are you okay? If you die on my stream, you're going to be in big trouble.
Oh,
you got it?
God.
Can you imagine? Here, I'll put you full screen so you can't die. There you go.
I'm okay.
Well, that's not nice.
Yeah. And I love this question about any idea when the new book will come out. It only took us 8 years to write the first one. So don't hold your breath.
Do you have an answer for the first one? So any recommendations for alternative pencils for the auditory draw?
I think we need a whole hour to address that question.
Okay.
Because it depends what pencil and yeah.
Fair enough. Mm-hmm. All right. I think we probably beat this to death here. Let's see. Like that's all the ones I can get to. So, any questions for you two? Beth, Laura, you guys got anything?
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to mention, as I was trying to post it and I couldn't get it to post. So Karen had mentioned the communication book that is well aligned with the Readtopia curriculum units. And if you just search on LessonPix in the materials in the sharing center for Readtopia flipbook, you'll find that. And
you were trying to post it to the chat.
Yeah, I was trying to post it to the chat.
Let's see if I can do this.
Perhaps because it was a link. I don't know. I'm not.
Well, here, let's switch to this for a second. So which one? This one?
The second one. Yep, that's it.
This one. All right, so here's your link. Oh, I see why. It's because we are on a test server. Maybe. Let's see if I can just post it here. Let's see.
Oh, I don't know. I might have been pasting it from the test server.
It did post it to YouTube. I don't know if it ever came up with the other one. So there you go. So there's the link. This is a flip book that Lori and Beth and people worked on. It uses GridBooks, which is awesome. GridBooks is another place where it might make sense to add literacy support to the GridBooks. I don't know. It might go here in a tab or something. I don't know. But you never know what's going to happen. There's more spaces for us to add things. So, Lori, how about you?
How about me? I think we did a great job here,
Yeah.
Covering the tool as well, but mostly talking about the reasons why and behind it all.
Yeah. Yep. And that's why I love having Karen on. It's always educational for everybody. Karen, did you have any questions for us? Do you have any comments or, oh, by the way, I hate how you did X.
No.
No, it's all good.
Those, you already heard those comments.
Yeah.
In the whole development. Don't do that.
I fixed most of them, right?
Yes, you did.
So Karen and I also have a really neat visualization we're working on for our demo. We're not going to show it tonight. Well, man, it's a really neat way to show
Save something for later.
Yeah.
I will say,
looks like as it explodes.
We get questions all the time about when are we going to do symbolated text or sentence strips, all the time. And so it's so nice to have more and more opportunities to talk about why we don't do things that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Karen says, thank you. Thank you for being here, Karen. I hope everything's good up there. All right. I think we're going to wrap this up. We went long. I'm not shocked, Karen, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
I think we'll push this out live tonight. We will make the videos over the weekend and make it officially announced on Monday.
There you go. You just made the plan.
Maybe we'll make it live tomorrow at 5. If you want it tonight, post in the comments. Otherwise, I might take a night off and do this tomorrow.
And sleep. That would be
a long time. I'll just introduce errors if I do it now.
Yeah.
So
there was one last question. I don't know, from Andre James. I don't know if Karen wants to.
Yeah, you have to go read the book.
You're not gonna do the whole book tonight?
I don't mean to be so flippant. It is Readtopia is a curriculum that reflects the teaching principles that are described and the research that's described in the Comprehensive for All. There is a white paper that is a part of Readtopia also that you can access on the to get some more information about it, and the research for each of the components of it is described in there also.
Excellent. Okay. All right, guys. I think we're going to shut this down. All of you lovely people, thank you for joining me tonight. Those of you in Facebook land, I'm sorry you had trouble with the stream. It is available on YouTube, and we'll make sure we post that again. We will post the full video to Facebook as well, so you can watch it afterwards. I will give Facebook or StreamYard some grief about failing us here, but not tonight. So, all right, I think we're going to end the stream. Good night, everybody. See you later.
Good night.